Welcome to the Lawyer Life podcast, where the personal, professional, and political intersect. Each week, we discuss a topic to help ourselves and other lawyers navigate our days with a little less stress and ideally a lot more fulfillment. On today's episode, we're closing off season 1, and we're going to chat about our favorite moments of the past year podcasting and look forward to what is next for the Lawyer Life podcast. I'm Mike Anderson.
And I'm Darlene Tonelli.
Holy smokes, Darlene Tonelli.
A year. I can't believe it.
We have been podcasting for 365 days approximately.
Approximately. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I thought maybe at the beginning we might podcast for like a couple weeks. Yeah. I don't know. We didn't know what would happen.
I found our first episode, which we never aired. Do you remember what that was?
The interview that you did with me?
Yeah.
Oh, terrible. Truly, truly terrible. Never.
No.
You never just didn't like it. See the light of day.
You didn't like it because it was about you. I think it was good.
Well, that's kind of you to say. It was very much how I learned that I did not want this podcast to be a one-person interview format all the time, certainly not interviewing me. And it was also where I learned that I was going to need you to come in and force me to not edit things. Because in that episode, I really wanted to re-listen to it and, delete 98% of it. And you wouldn't let me do that. And that's part of why it doesn't exist. But anyway.
That was also at the time, probably like our second or third conversation over an hour ever.
I suppose that's right. Yeah, it was a bit of a flyer to think that we would be able to converse once weekly for an hour about lawyerly topics. That's a flyer.
Yeah, but here we are.
Mm-hmm.
We did it. And it's been, I think to my count, 45 episodes, maybe even more. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
And credit to our listeners for staying with us. I mean, this is great. It's very clear that we have this like solid group of folks that every couple weeks are with us on this journey. And we're going to talk about what's coming up next. And, basically we have 2 seasons that we are excited to deliver. Maybe I'll talk about those 2 quick and then we'll start the recap. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay. So the next season, we're doing like a little mini season. We're calling it the Lawyer Life Podcast Goes Back to School. Back to school. Okay, with Billy Madison. Back to school.
Oh my gosh. No, that's a blast. You were like a baby when Billy Madison.
Oh, it was the coolest movie when I was that age. It was so cool. Anyway, so we're going back to school, meaning that we're going to do a mini season, about 4 episodes, dedicated for students that are starting law school or going back second or third year, and that will feature we have a dean of one of the law schools in Ontario interviewed, as well as some folks who work for certain faculties, and we're going to be talking to students and other people about how to best thrive and be fulfilled in law school.
That's very exciting. This is the hope is always to be helpful, and this is just a targeted approach to help law students.
And even if you aren't in law school, but if you want to come, down the nostalgic journey with us of revisiting your time in law school, it is fun for that purpose as well. We get insight into what law school Darlene was like. We get insight into what law school Mike was like. I don't think either actually are all that different from who we are now. But anyway, it'll be fun. So that's the next mini season coming up. And then we're going to do a full longer season. So that'll, I guess, be season 3, focused on high performance and in a very kind of structured and a way that every episode there will be some simple, tangible takeaways for people to apply in their lives if they want to, kind of build good habits for sustainable high performance. And that's everything from understanding what you really want to do in your career to keeping your body right and your mind right, building relationships, all those sort of things.
That's going to be so fun. I'm so excited about that. I was just saying to someone yesterday that as part of the life preparation for the Lawyer Life pod,
Yeah.
I used to read a ton of books, and they were all on self-help or self-development or personal growth. And, all of that stuff we bring into the equation. And I'm kind of curating some of the ones that I've found helpful, and you're adding the ones that you find helpful. And we're trying things. Our goal is to try to actually walk the walk as we're trying to explain what some of these helpful tips might be. So, yeah, I think that's going to be a really fun season.
It's kind of a journey that we'll all go on together. So as we go through an episode and we have takeaways, Darlene and I will be taking them away as well. And then in the next episode, updating you on how we've done. So get ready for me to complain about how I didn't go to bed in time 6 nights in a row or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Or like,
that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, you're going to be like, I didn't drink 8 glasses of water because I am a lizard or whatever.
Oh my
Darlene
God.
doesn't drink water.
I'm so far from 8 glasses of water. So far. I wish that I could say that I was an 8 glass of water person, but no, maybe if it's a challenge, we'll see how I do. But so far I do poorly.
It feels like that's not that hard of an achievement for you to
well, we'll see.
possible.
We'll see. We'll have to set up the tension. Will Darlene drink 8 glasses of water, or will she stick with 2? What a fascinating journey we're going to take you on.
This 12 months of podcasting has made you a broadcasting professional. You're working in the T's. Holy smokes. People will be talking about this for months. Can't wait. Okay. So, season 1 is complete as of this episode. Mm-hmm. And we did a bit of a recap around New Year's. And that was, recapping the first 20 or so episodes. And that was really fun. And so at least, I know I've made a list of things that I want to talk about. Most of them are focused on the second half of the season. But first, Darlene, to kick off our recap, what have you learned from doing this thing? What are your key lessons?
Well, I think the key lessons, if I can summarize, I've learned to be a much better person who gives summaries from Mike Anderson. I would say a couple of things. One, I really have learned the benefit of not editing myself and not trying to make everything, sound or be exactly the way that I need it to be, and to accept that there can be some fortuitousness in not knowing and not controlling. Like, I don't have all the answers. And I think that from the beginning, you've been very, because of the nature of the way we record this podcast, we always said we were going to try to be, very authentic and open about how we were doing things. And part of that is that we don't edit too much other than for length, usually. So that's been really interesting for me, because I've learned to speak in a way that's a bit more clear, less rambly as the season has gone on. Still working on it, but trying. And that's been just a form of self-improvement, I think, that was unexpected. And then I would say the second piece is that we started the podcast to, with, I guess, maybe limited goals. I'd be interested to hear what your goals were when we started. But my goal really was to just start, helping lawyers a little bit by talking about topics that we didn't read very much authentic conversation about. And over the course of doing that, I've discovered that this is, like, I love this stuff. I mean, this is where, as I was saying about the books, like, I've done a fair amount of preparation for this podcast in my life. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that. That wasn't what the thought was at the time. How about you? What are your takeaways?
I think the major one is that I feel quite fortunate to basically every Friday have time set aside to speak to somebody like you and all of our guests who are, lawyers who have done spectacular things professionally, also personally, and some politically. Did you like that?
That was very good.
Thank you.
I was waiting. I was like, will he?
Yeah, here it comes. The 3 Ps. And but for this podcast, I wouldn't have that opportunity to learn from you and all the guests that we have. And I think that's really unique. I just finished my 5th year of practice. And so I'm still definitely developing and learning. And I know for a fact that I have picked up some great tools, but also like perspectives that have helped me in the past 12 months become a better lawyer. So that's been one major thing. The other thing that, speaking of like just doing this and understanding strengths and so on, is actually came from one of our book club episodes, the Daniel Pink, why right brainers will rule the world. He calls this skill symphony. They're like the ability to connect things and the ability to, I guess, summarize but mostly making connections across things that don't necessarily seem apparently connected. And I really feel like the conversations we've had have, by the end of every talk we have, whether it's between you or I or with a guest, I kind of see them all connecting and aligning. Like I do really feel like there's probably 5 or 10 things, which we will, highlight mainly in the high performance season upcoming, but there's like 5 or 10 things that we can do to improve ourselves and the way that we practice that are achievable and consistent, and I think we're learning that as we go. So that kind of symphony that I'm seeing in every episode has been really exciting as well.
Well, I forgot about that symphony concept actually, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think too, I mean, you're mentoring also on this episode, right? You're teaching me the ways of the youth. That makes sense. You're teaching me about summarizing. You've got the technical skills that make this podcast go round. And, this sort of can-do mentality, I think I've taken away. And I think that a lot of senior lawyers could stand to look to people who are newer to the practice. I think it's fundamental. I think it's necessary. And, what you're saying about the mentoring every week, I mean, I think that what I hear from listeners, when I hear from listeners, which I love, if I haven't said that before, love that, highlight of my week. I do hear that there is a void right now for real mentoring with like a caring hand of, this is difficult. And we have no ego about it, in that we're not saying, we do everything properly and you need to follow what we do. We're just kind of trying to share the journey with people. And I have heard anecdotally that people find that helpful. So I hope we can keep that up. And yeah, I mean, the mentors we've spoken to, Bob Ray, like that was a highlight. That was so great to talk to him early in the pod.
I listen to that episode sometimes, I find new things. There's little nuggets of wisdom everywhere through that episode. And I think depending on where you are, I know I listen to that episode now quite differently than I did at the time. And there are things at the time that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what I'm holding on to. And now I'm holding on to different things from his episode.
If you don't think forward, if you don't think ahead or remain curious or remain interested, you're done. I mean, at that point, you just become, you just get old. And I think it was George Bernard Shaw who said, it's not that you're too old to play, it's that you're getting old because you've stopped playing. And I think you've got to keep playing, and you've got to keep looking ahead and keep thinking.
I can't even express how much gold there is in the Bob Ray episode. It just it's fantastic. And it was such a pleasure to talk to him, no doubt. And so would you say that's one of your favorite moments? Do you have any other favorites?
Well, I think, but for the poor audio quality in our early days, I did really enjoy the Jerry Maguire episode where we learned that we were both influenced.
I was an athlete. I was a short guy. And so Jerry Maguire was my boy, right? Like I love the film.
How have we not talked about this before? Oh my God, this is amazing.
Are you a big Jerry Maguire person?
Yes. I wouldn't say that it was my inspiration for law school, but I have certainly had my Jerry Maguire moments in my career, which we will talk about.
Well, yeah, okay, we'll have to talk about, because I feel like inter alia is kind of like the equivalent of writing the memo.
It's a mission statement.
Because over time, I mean, just all the time, I come up with this kind of recurring theme in my life that I tend to take that Jerry Maguire approach. I think there's a reason that movie's so popular and speaks to some people so strongly. And when dealing with Graham, one of the things that made me want to invite him onto the show, Graham Henderson, is that when I saw him speak about the sort of crusade that he's on right now for musicians and artists, he handed out a blue report in a nice font. And I thought, this is a mission statement. It's just like the Jerry Maguire mission statement. And I thought there's something deep about that way of looking at the world. And so that was definitely a highlight for me.
It's really funny. Like, boiled down to it, that movie is about like a person who is feeding their ego, who is overworked and stressed and hasn't prioritized their life, their personal life at all, having just a moment where they realize all the problems and changing their professional life to start to solve their personal issues. And really, that is what we're trying to achieve here. We're trying to show that there's different ways of practicing law and different ways of being a lawyer, and actually ways that you can have a fulfilled and happy life while practicing law, doing your job in a way that you enjoy. And it's I don't know, I think it's kind of really neat that both you and I, deep down, that when we saw that, albeit at very different ages, might I say, but when we saw that, it both hit us and stayed with us for decades. So I agree. The Jerry Maguire moment was super fun.
Yeah, another highlight for me was, I think, and we're talking about, recapping the pod, I think a highlight was when you and I showed up to interview Mark Sakamoto, and you had the equipment, and we were full on, podcasters in our podcast selves rather than our lawyerly selves. And that to me was a little bit of a Rubicon crossed, and just so fun to talk to him about the interesting experiences he's had since going to law school. I mean, that was quite... Talking about the Bob Ray interview, I mean, the Mark Sakamoto one also just had a ton of things that I've thought of many, many times since then.
Like what?
Well, like the thing about time. He talked a lot about, time's the only thing you can't get more of.
People for some reason seem to equate busyness with import. Mm-hmm. Busyness with productivity. That's completely batshit crazy. I think. I like those days where I'm like, oh, here's a big chunk of time where I don't have anything. Mm-hmm. And those are your most productive periods.
I really think the more we can incorporate that into our lives as lawyers, the better. But yet it's completely counterintuitive to how the practice of law in traditional form works. So yeah, that was a highlight. I mean, there have been so many highlights, actually, now that we really get into it.
Yeah, I on my list as well was the conversation we had with Catherine. And first of all, Catherine and I hit it off so well. Only yes. we talked for 5 minutes before the episode started recording, and loved our conversation then and during the podcast so much that 2 days later we had to get coffee together, and that lasted it was supposed to be a half hour. I think it was an hour and a half by the time it was done. She's fantastic, first of all. But it was I think a really important chat for us to understand and continue to understand what it's like for people who don't feel welcomed in the profession or in their office, and how we can start to focus on making the profession welcoming and really open to folks of all walks of life.
I mean, we've all been in those situations where somebody asks you a question and they're not listening to the answer, right? Mm-hmm. So, the asking about how are you and how do you feel, and really listening. Mm-hmm. The making introductions to people, the making sure that people have real work with people, get access to people who are decision makers, asking for input in meetings, paying attention. And what I think that we're all aware of is that this is really hurtful and painful and really impacts confidence and work performance and emotional well-being. And that being aware of that is maybe a really great starting point.
And that was, I know that you've mentioned, receiving feedback from listeners and how great that is. Catherine passed along some feedback from a listener who is in New York and actually said that he, for the first time, felt like his experience as a lawyer was encapsulated, and sent the episode to the director of HR or equivalent of his firm to use it as an educational tool for some of the leadership there. So that was really cool. And very it's so humbling. I think it's I always talk about it. I record in my attic. You record in your house. Sometimes we're together. Most times we're not. It's very humbling to think that just sitting in these seats and talking as you and I do so often during work, I almost forget that this stuff gets out there.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting that even something, if that was the only thing that came out of season 1, I would be just so excited with that single outcome. So, receiving that sort of feedback and understanding that we were part of a conversation that might be helpful is super cool and a highlight for me.
Well, and that's the really interesting thing that I've always thought is cool about podcasts is that it is evergreen content. If you need to go back and it's like an audiobook. If there was something that you benefited from and want to share, there it is, as opposed to if you go to a live event, you're like, oh, I saw this cool seminar on, unconscious bias. Like, how do I share that? Sometimes you can, but with podcasts, that's really a nice thing about them.
Speaking about revisiting things, so I had hockey last night and Sheriff Complex Mike nearly hulked himself out of my calm and cool body. It was so close.
Why? What happened? What happened? All your personal development is for naught.
Oh boy, he was. So the problem is this. It's a summer league, so there's only 4 teams. So we play each other once a month at minimum. Sometimes more than once a month. It's too much playing against the same people. And there's one team that unfortunately is awful and we beat all the time. And they don't like us for that reason. And anytime something small occurs, they get super mad and physical, and it's not good. So there's one guy who specifically hates me.
Oh my God.
And I've been very much like staying away from him and not engaging. I told him once I was like, I'm not going to engage in this.
Wow.
But he started to push over at literally be really physical with a bunch of guys on my team. And so I skated over and I was going to tell him what I thought, but I did not.
Wow.
I did not. And I kept it cool and actually deflated, or what do you say?
Diffused,
de-escalated the situation. Yeah. So that I'm telling you, that Sheriff Complex episode I don't know I guess hockey falls into the personal section of my life. I'm not a professional. So that that continues to be helpful to me as I play in stupid men's league hockey games.
Well, you know what? Let's just go onto that point for 1 second, because it does demonstrate something which I was just saying to someone yesterday is important to know about all this personal growth stuff. It's like you can only develop to the level that you're at the moment, right? So I find that even if you do make an improvement on Sheriff Complex, for example, you're able to kind of deal with the regular situation. And then when a new situation presents with additional challenges, something that you thought you had dealt with needs to be, dusted off and revisited because it's a higher level of conflict. So I do think that sometimes people get discouraged with stuff like this because they think, I'm not making a lot of progress. But, you are. It's just that you keep continually becoming a better and better version of your old self. And then it takes bigger and bigger challenges. So it's not to say that you do all this work and you suddenly get no challenges. It's that you do all this work so that, 6 months ago in that situation, you might have I don't know what horrors can befall a person in Hamilton Summer Hockey League.
That's the thing that scares me.
Well, yes. So that bad things could have happened without the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Things that I would maybe do differently from the podcast. 2 things. I think I would maybe have more confidence in the beginning. I think in the beginning we didn't even put these episodes out until we had been doing this for 4 months, 3 months?
Yeah, it was a few months for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it very much felt like a toe in the water. And I think part of that is that we're part of a team and, we don't want to be doing things that are too far outside what people are comfortable with. And specifically, I was concerned about that. But overall, I kind of, for season 2, I'd like to be a little bit more, public about what we're trying to do here and try to find more and more allies and people that are interested in it.
That's right. We're going to let our hair down For me, that's figurative because I don't have any.
And for me, I have not done that in at least 10 years. No way. I am a ponytail or bust. What about big surprises? Was there anything about, you have a different background than I do. I mean, for me, this is so much farther outside of my comfort zone. For you, with a background in TV production, maybe there were less surprises, but was there anything that you were like surprised about that you didn't know when we started this?
Truthfully, I'm surprised of our listenership and its size and dedication. Like, it's such a, I don't know, like, there's only so many lawyers around, and I don't know how many lawyers even know what a podcast is. And then are interested in the kind of conversations we're having and frankly, the personalities we are. I'm probably not for everybody. So to see consistently, like it is, when we look at the numbers, it's so apparent that this is a consistent community of people who are interested in the conversations that we share. And I didn't anticipate that we'd be able to find that set, especially so quickly. And I know it's been a year, but a lot of podcasts go for a couple months and, then, kind of fall off. And we've seen people really come along with us. And that has been something that has been obviously super pleasant, but a surprise for me.
I think that's interesting. I mean, I'm definitely surprised, but also didn't know what to expect. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think that's a better way of putting it. Totally.
Yeah, we've been working with podcasters as clients, so we had an understanding of the market. We've been, being from the music industry, I was into podcasts when they were a new thing, and then they kind of went away, and now they're sort of a big thing. So there's sort of an interesting relationship with podcasts in the music business. But I am just sort of, I don't know. I think the thing that's most surprising to me is that I would do it even if no one was listening on some level, because I think it's inherently been so helpful to me to structure my own non-law thinking. I mean, I've commented on that a few times in the podcast, but as my friends would say, I have a lot of thoughts and I need to find a spot to put them. And, that spot has become the podcast. And to the extent they're helpful to people, that's great. And that was kind of unexpected too. You think you have to do something for a specific reason, and sometimes there's a whole other reason why you're doing it that you didn't know. I had a client along a couple of years ago. She taught me this expression, the ease and the effort. I don't know if you know this expression, and I don't know where she got it, so I can't credit it properly. But I think about it when I'm doing the podcast, in that there are certain parts of my week that feel like they're a heavier lift. The podcast doesn't feel that way to me. And I say that in deference to you because you do a lot more of the tech heavy lifting than I do. But, it just feels like a normal and natural part of the week.
I was just going to say, like, to finish up and put as I love to do, put a big period at the end of this sentence. Do you think that we're making a dent? Do you think anything that we've done on this thing is useful?
Well, I'll start by saying it's useful to me, and anecdotally, the people who feel comfortable talking to me about it seem to say that it has been. And I think it's been helpful to non-lawyers. That's been pretty consistent level of feedback. And I think as well, I do think this stuff is valuable. I think it's time for this level of discussion. I think it's just, if people weren't thinking about these things before, you kind of have to now, because we're hitting so many tipping points in our society. And I think it's important to us to do this. It's important to us to learn how to put these ideas out there in a way that makes sense for people. And it's important for people to, if they don't find us, maybe they start with us and realize there's something they like about this, and then they go somewhere else. To me, it's always been a finding the sources that speak best to you. That's the journey, right? You start one place, think you want to improve, not sure who's the one that's got the right message for you. You start there and make your way. I'm mostly excited that people seem to be starting, and hopefully that continues. How about you?
I think you did it, Darlene. I think that was a perfect summary. Look at us.
Awesome. My new skill. That was not my skill in law school. not my skill. It was
I love summaries.
I was the multi-highlighter, multi-post-it note person, but I don't even know if that still happens.
For our back to school season in the show notes, because we talk about summaries in one episode at least, I might post an image of what my summaries look like because they were gorgeous.
Do it.
Oh
if I still
my
had
God.
mine, I would do it too. But I kept them till about 2 years ago. And then they were all like securities and things that I don't practice anymore. So I got rid of them.
And I think that the technology you had access to at the time was what, like a quill pen, was it?
Oh yeah. You know what I did? I took my paper summaries to the binding place at Kinko's and got like a special plastic binding thing on them.
Right.
And a cover.
Right.
It was pink, I remember, on all of them. Pink, well, green for one class.
I color coded by course. So.
Oh, wow. We're nerds from way back. But I think that people can really relate to that. And I think that law students listening are like, what are summaries, as I was when I started. But anyway, the joy is in making your own summary, as we will discuss. Again, these teasers, like who can compete with these? That's so exciting.
Back to school.
Making summaries, drinking water. The times are so exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I got to say, this has been a real pleasure. This is almost the end of season 1. I guess what we're about to do is the last Good and Gripe of season 1. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. We'll be right back after this. The Lawyer Life podcast is brought to you by Inter Alia Law. Inter Alia lawyers have big firm training, in-house experience, and a wide range of expertise in technology, media, and entertainment. Our advice is business-focused, speedy, and practical. To learn more, visit interalialaw.com. That's interalialaw.com. And we are back with our goods and gripes. Goods are things we want to promote and support, and gripes are things that annoy us. Darlene.
Okay, so first good ties back to an earlier episode. We had an episode where you said you were questioning why people don't just go for a run when I was talking about how I circle the gym parking lot.
And my gripe was that people drive to the gym to run on a treadmill when they could just run. Yeah.
At which point I explained to you that when you get to be an aged person, you don't run anymore because you have these bad knees. And then I went to see the Rolling Stones concert a couple weeks ago, and I saw Mick Jagger on the stage, and his energy is just unbelievable. I mean, he just inhabits his body like in a way that, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously part of his career, but he had so much energy and vitality that I just thought, you know what? I can go for a run. I'm not going to accept this stuff about bad knees and stuff. So I have been running, and I would like to report that I probably wouldn't have started doing it again had we not had that conversation. And it was something I used to really enjoy, and I'm doing it. And it's, the beginning 4 minutes are like an exercise in pain management, and then it's fine. I feel like there's a metaphor there. So I wanted to update because that was a direct positive in my life that has come from the Lawyer Life podcast and a little bit of good-natured ribbing that I got.
Well, that's very good.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Okay. Yeah. I have a good. It's related. Well, it's about podcasts, which sounds nerdy or whatever, annoying. So I was driving back from my in-laws. It was just me and my daughter, who's almost 3. She happily fell asleep at one point. And I put on a conversation between Conan O'Brien and Stephen Colbert, which is great. It's from Conan's podcast, Conan O'Brien Wants a Friend, or something like that. And it was there's one particular part in the conversation which I plan to talk a lot about in at least one episode of our high performance season, but just very candid, open, honest, vulnerable conversation between 2 adult men, which is not that common, about their childhoods and how that informed their view of how you could be successful. And effectively, just to summarize it, and I'll get into it more as I said, they both felt, because of their Catholic upbringing, according to them, that you had to suffer greatly to succeed. and they are both still dealing with that, even though they're gigantically successful. They both still feel that even though their therapists and their family and their friends tell them that they don't have to put themselves through hell to, be a successful person, they still kind of feel like they need to. And that really resonated with me, and I think it might with a lot of lawyers. And I think this medium allows for that type of conversation to occur, and it couldn't occur in any other medium. So I'm just, this is a good medium and an exciting one and a great one for people who are trying to improve themselves. So that's my good. Do you have a gripe?
My only gripe, again, podcast related, would be just, I would love it if we could get more sort of information on what the listeners want from the podcast. That's what I would love.
Right.
That's my gripe. It's not really it's sort of a good / gripe. It's just, it would be great. And we could respond real time, which is possible in this format.
Well, we have talked about putting a questionnaire up for our listeners to give us feedback through. Do you think that we should put that in our show notes and so on?
Let's do it.
Okay.
We'll have to agree on the questions. You can draft, you can phrase them. I'll tell you the content. But yeah, I think it would be really good. I'll be like, here's what I would like to know. And Mike can turn them into some fun stuff.
Podcast wise and work wise, I think we're slowly learning that that is the relationship that we do well within. It's like, yeah, is that fair to say?
Yep, I think that's fair.
I have a gripe, and it is that we should be celebrating, and we are not currently celebrating. This is the downside, and we work from home a lot. We're virtual counsel in many instances, working from our homes. This is the downside of not being in the same physical space, because I really do feel like, we were recording the last episode of our first season of ever podcasting. It's a monumental time, and we would otherwise be, if we were working in the same office, we would be going for a drink after this, I feel.
It's true. It's true.
But we are
I
not.
guess we can have a virtual drink alone, but that's probably not a good idea. That's maybe not what
so
you're
weird.
going for. Let's
each go to a pub near our house and FaceTime each other. That would be the exact same experience.
Oh,
I'm sure.
be. It would be so cool, and we would be super cool people at each of our respective pubs.
Yeah, but in one episode, I did talk about how we as legal professionals need to get better at looking at what we've done and feeling proud of ourselves and celebrating. So we'll have to rain check it, but we need to make sure that we take that time at some point.
I think it's so true. And also just just to take the time to enjoy the weather and get outside. And I always say to everybody, like, make sure to get outside once in a day, even if you work from home, because it's very important. And I think that it is the nature of virtual counsel. There's some great
nature.
The nature. Oh, I didn't even get it. See, I haven't come that far. I don't make puns on purpose very often. But anyway, well, this has been good. I'm glad we did a recap. It's good to kind of look back so you can know where you're going, what was good, because we don't do sort of a recap of this nature very often. We're usually planning on what's next, given the time constraints. So thanks for listening, everyone.
Yes, to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. It's super cool that you're sitting there and participating in this thing with us. And we hope that you come along the adventure of season 2, shortened season, back to school. And then season 3, which is going to be, I think it's going to be really special, our high performance season. Okay, that does it for now. I guess we will talk soon.
Talk soon.
That's it for this week's episode of LLP. Thanks to Inter Alia Law for presenting the podcast, and to Nick Fowler for composing and performing our music. See our show notes for his website. Don't forget, we love feedback. Please comment in the review section, or subscribe, or like. We'd appreciate it greatly. That's it. Talk soon.